This isn't a goddamn nursery. You have 10 seconds to shut that thing up before I personally have you and your brat thrown off this plane in handcuffs. Have you ever been publicly humiliated for something you couldn't control? Judged, sentenced, and condemned by a jury of strangers before you could even speak a word in your own defense? If you have, I want you to drop a comment below and let us know you're not alone. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you are about to witness a story of public shaming so extreme, so unbelievably arrogant, it led to one of the most epic takedowns in corporate history. The words, sharp and laced with venom, sliced through the hushed, sterile air of the first-class cabin. They were followed by a sound even more shocking, the sickeningly loud crack of flesh striking flesh. It echoed, a percussive punctuation to the cruelty, silencing the soft whir of the ventilation system. The flight attendant, Brenda Davis, had just backhanded Maya Williams across the face. Her palm, manicured and cruel, left a blooming red imprint on Maya's cheek as she instinctively tightened her hold on her 7-month-old son, Leo, nestled against her chest. Leo's cries, which had been the fussing of a tired baby, erupted into piercing shrieks of terror, his tiny body jolting from the sheer violence of the moment. Around them, the curtained-off world of privilege and entitlement reacted not with horror, but with a strange, predatory glee. iPhones emerged from expensive handbags and tailored suit pockets, their lenses instantly swiveling to capture the drama. They weren't recording an assault. They were documenting what they saw as the long-overdue discipline of an unruly passenger. "It's about time someone showed some backbone," a woman dripping in diamonds whispered to her husband, her voice a conspiratorial hiss of approval. A fiery sting radiated from Maya's cheek, a hot, blossoming pain that threatened to bring tears to her eyes. But her dark, almond-shaped eyes remained unwavering, a sea of impossible calm in a storm of hostility. Her hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she readjusted the soft blue blanket around Leo, her fingers brushing against the edge of her boarding pass lying in her lap. The name printed on it was Mrs. Maya Williams. Beside it was a special designation, a string of letters and numbers, a corporate gold status code that Brenda Davis had either missed or, more likely, willfully ignored. The cabin noise subsided, replaced by an eerie quiet broken only by Leo's distressed whimpers and the insidious, telltale clicks of phones recording her humiliation. Have you ever been judged as a bad parent, a public nuisance, before a single soul stopped to ask if you were okay or if you needed a helping hand? Brenda Davis, flushed with a sense of righteous power, straightened the crisp navy fabric of her uniform. The silver wings pinned to her chest glinted under the cabin's soft lighting as she postured for her captive audience. The slap hadn't just been an act of frustration. It had been a performance, and it had energized her. It was her moment to finally demonstrate what she considered real authority to the elite passengers who paid thousands for these seats, passengers she both served and secretly resented. "Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate disruption," Brenda announced, her voice booming with theatrical importance, loud enough to carry through the entire first-class section. Some people, it seems, lack a fundamental understanding of appropriate travel etiquette and respect for their fellow passengers. A wave of appreciative murmurs rippled through the seats. A man in a Brioni suit, his Rolex catching the light, gave a firm nod in Maya's direction. "Thank God someone's finally maintaining standards," he grumbled to his companion. "These people just think they can get away with anything." Maya remained a statue of silent composure. She said nothing. She simply began to bounce Leo gently, her movements rhythmic and soothing, trying to lull him back from the terror that had just assaulted his infant senses. His tiny fist, perfect and trusting, instinctively curled around his mother's finger. It was a gesture of pure, innocent connection that should have softened even the hardest of hearts. But in this hostile environment, it only seemed to fuel the passengers' irritation. They saw a woman defying the authority that was trying to protect their peace and quiet. With a flourish of dramatic efficiency, Brenda pulled out her internal radio, speaking into it with a voice brimming with manufactured urgency. "Captain Roberts, we have a Code 3 situation in first class. I have a disruptive passenger with an infant who is refusing to comply with crew instructions." The radio crackled back a moment later. "Copy that, Brenda. What's your recommendation?" "I'm recommending immediate removal before we push back from the gate," she replied, a triumphant smirk touching her lips. "She's already delayed our departure by 6 minutes with this little tantrum." Maya glanced down at her phone. The screen displayed the time, 9:04 a.m. Boarding was scheduled to close at 9:15 a.m. Below the time was a calendar alert. 11 Turku Est Apex Air merger announcement. Final sign-off required. She swiped it away before Brenda's prying eyes could make out the words. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice quiet and steady, almost swallowed by the ambient noise. "My ticket is for seat 3A. I paid for this service, and I would appreciate it if you—" Brenda cut her off with a laugh that was sharp and utterly contemptuous. "Honey, I don't give a damn what kind of scam you pulled to get that ticket. People like you are always trying to sneak your way into premium cabins. I know every trick in the book." Across the aisle, a young woman, likely a college student, had her phone up, the distinctive interface of a TikTok live stream visible on her screen. She whispered to her phone with wide, dramatic eyes. "Oh my God, y'all, this is completely insane. This flight attendant just smacked a mom holding her baby. I am speechless." Her viewer count was exploding. It jumped from 500 to 2,500, then rocketed past 4,000 in seconds. But the comment section was a cesspool of vitriol, a real-time reflection of the cabin's ugly mood. Finally, a flight attendant who disciplines bad parents. Why can't people drug their kids before a flight? So inconsiderate. That mom looks like she has a serious entitlement problem. "Team flight attendant, Brenda is a hero, maintaining order." Brenda, noticing the phone and the growing online audience, leaned into her role as the righteous enforcer. "Ma'am," she said, addressing Maya but playing to the cameras, "if you cannot manage your child in a manner that is respectful to other passengers, I have every right, under federal aviation law, to request your removal. Our airline's policy on disruptive individuals is crystal clear." Maya, ignoring the threat, reached into her expensive leather carry-on to retrieve a bottle of ready-made formula. As she shifted a pack of diapers, something else caught the light for a fleeting second. A flash of metallic black and platinum. It was an executive card, nestled between baby wipes and a teething ring. She quickly tucked it out of sight, but its design was unique, unlike any standard frequent flyer card anyone had ever seen. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an incoming call. The name on the screen was visible for a split second to the passengers in the adjacent seats. Apex Air, Office of the CEO. She calmly declined the call. Brenda's eyes narrowed, her suspicion mixed with contempt. "Who do you think you're calling now?" she sneered. "Your baby daddy isn't going to get you out of this. Federal aviation regulations are a little more powerful than he is." The insult, so personal and layered with racial and class-based prejudice, was like a second slap. A few passengers chuckled audibly. The businessman in the Brioni suit felt emboldened to speak up again, his voice loud and condescending. "Miss, you're holding up over 200 passengers with this melodrama. Some of us have important business to attend to. We have places to be." 10 minutes until mandatory departure. Captain Roberts' voice suddenly boomed over the intercom, clipped and official. "Flight crew, please prepare for final cross-check and arm the doors." Maya glanced at her watch. It was a simple, elegant timepiece, with a black leather band, nothing ostentatious. But a close look at the back would have revealed a tiny, almost invisible engraving. To my brilliant wife. All my love, D.W. Brenda was building toward her grand finale, the final act of her power play. "Ma'am," she declared, puffing out her chest, "I am going to ask you one final time to gather your belongings and deplane voluntarily. If you refuse, I will be forced to have federal air marshals physically escort you from this aircraft." The TikTok live stream surged past 10,000 viewers. The comments were a blur of digital hate and applause for Brenda. But now, buried within the torrent of judgment, a few dissenting voices began to appear. Wait a minute. Something feels off here. Why is the mom so incredibly calm? She's not even crying. That woman is way too composed for someone who just got hit. I'm not so sure about this. That flight attendant is being way too aggressive. This seems personal. Near the window, another business passenger, a man who had been quiet until now, opened his laptop. He wasn't watching the drama. He was analyzing it. He logged into an exclusive aviation industry forum and started a new thread. The title was, "Witnessing Potential Discrimination and Assault in Real Time, Apex Air Flight 921. Within seconds, industry insiders, pilots, and airline executives from competing companies were following the story as it developed. Brenda, convinced of her impending victory, keyed her radio one last time. "Captain, the passenger remains non-compliant. I am requesting immediate assistance from ground security." "Copy that," the radio replied. "Ground crew is on standby." For only the second time, Maya spoke, her voice still quiet but now carrying an unmistakable edge of steel. "Ma'am, I understand that you believe you are following protocol. However, I would strongly suggest that you verify my passenger status before you take an action that will be completely and utterly irreversible." "Irreversible?" Brenda's laugh was a high-pitched shriek of disbelief. "Lady, the only thing irreversible here is the stain your behavior is leaving on this airline. You think just because you scammed your way into a designer outfit and a first-class seat that you can disrupt an entire flight full of paying customers?" The woman in diamonds leaned forward, her pearls clinking softly. "Young lady," she chimed in, her voice dripping with condescension. "In my day, parents understood how to travel with children. This whole display is just shameful. Utterly shameful." More phones were out now. The incident was being recorded from at least a dozen different angles. Facebook live feeds were active. Instagram stories were being uploaded with filters and captions. The hashtag #DochoApexAirDrama was beginning to trend in the Chicago area. Through it all, Maya's unnatural calm was the most unsettling element in the cabin. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't making threats or demands. Her composure was almost chilling, the profound stillness of someone who knew a secret the rest of the world had yet to discover. Baby Leo had finally calmed down, his whimpers subsiding into soft gurgles, his tiny heart seemingly regulated by the steady, unbothered rhythm of his mother's. His dark, intelligent eyes scanned the cabin, taking in the sea of hostile faces with the pure, untainted curiosity of an infant. Instead of charming the onlookers, his peacefulness only seemed to stoke their righteous anger further. 8 minutes, Brenda announced, her voice filled with finality. "Security will be on board in 8 minutes, and this situation, ma'am, will finally be resolved, one way or another." Maya leaned down and kissed Leo's forehead, whispering something into his tiny ear, a message too soft and private for the recording phones to capture. But as she straightened up, her eyes held a chilling certainty, a deep well of knowledge that made the most observant people in the cabin, the blogger, the few dissenting commenters, the college student on TikTok, suddenly and deeply uncomfortable. Something was about to happen. Something was about to change everything. A commanding presence filled the aisle as Captain Roberts strode into the first-class cabin, his 4 gold stripes gleaming on his epaulets. 25 years of flying commercial airliners had taught him how to project an aura of unshakable authority, a necessary tool for diffusing passenger conflicts. "What seems to be the problem here, Brenda?" His voice was a low baritone, accustomed to being obeyed without question. Energized by the arrival of her superior, Brenda immediately launched into her rehearsed narrative. "Sir, this passenger has been a continuous source of disruption since the moment she boarded. The child has been screaming uncontrollably. She has flatly refused all crew instructions, and now she is becoming argumentative about deplaning." Captain Roberts's eyes settled on Maya. His mind, trained by years of experience and unconscious bias, quickly processed the scene. Young black mother, an expensive-looking diaper bag, a first-class ticket. The pieces didn't quite add up in his worldview, so his brain defaulted to the most convenient narrative, the one Brenda had just supplied. "Ma'am, I am Captain Roberts. Federal aviation regulations are not optional. They mandate that all passengers must comply with the instructions of the flight crew, without exception." The TikTok livestream viewer count exploded past 20,000. The college student filming was whispering breathlessly to her audience, "The captain is here now, you guys. It's getting so real." The comment section became a frenzy of speculation. "She's about to get arrested on a plane." "Wild. The captain looks pissed. He's not playing." "Bye, Felicia. Hope they ban her from Apex for life." Maya subtly adjusted Leo in her arms, discreetly glancing at her phone. 6 minutes until the departure deadline. 6 minutes until the world changed. 6 minutes until what? Captain Roberts demanded, his patience, already worn thin by pre-flight checks, snapping. "Ma'am, whatever personal schedule you believe you are on, I assure you it does not supersede federal air safety and security protocols." As if on cue, 2 men emerged from the galley area. They were dressed in plain clothes, jeans, nondescript jackets, but they moved with a purpose and awareness that screamed law enforcement. They were federal air marshals, and their very presence instantly elevated the situation from a customer service dispute to a potential national security threat. Air Marshal Cardenas approached Maya's seat with cautious, deliberate steps, his hand resting casually but purposefully near his concealed firearm. "Captain, can you brief me on the nature of the disturbance?" "Passenger non-compliance," Captain Roberts replied curtly. "She's refusing to deplane after the crew has identified her and the infant as disruptive." The business passenger, who had been posting to the aviation forum, paused to snap several high-resolution photos with his phone. His thread was now viral within the industry. It had over 500 shares and nearly 1,000 comments, and the numbers were climbing every second. Professionals were debating crew overreach versus passenger entitlement in real time. Brenda, sensing her moment of absolute victory was at hand, seized the cabin intercom once more. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice dripping with faux regret, "we sincerely apologize for this continued delay, which is being caused by a single uncooperative passenger. We expect to have this matter resolved momentarily and be on our way to Atlanta." The announcement was like throwing gasoline on a fire. A chorus of angry voices erupted from both first class and the main cabin. "Just get her off the plane already. Some people have zero consideration for anyone else. I've got a tight connection in Atlanta. This is absolutely ridiculous." The TikTok viewer count blew past 30,000. Apex Air drama was now trending nationally on Twitter. News outlets were starting to pick up on the viral commotion. Through it all, Maya remained seated, a pillar of serenity. Leo was now perfectly calm, his big eyes watching the commotion with a baby's innocent curiosity. Maya's composure was becoming more than just unsettling. It was almost eerie. She looked like someone who wasn't a participant in the drama, but rather a spectator waiting for the final, predetermined act to begin. Air Marshal Davis flanked Maya's other side, creating an intimidating wall of federal authority. "Ma'am, we need you to gather your personal belongings and accompany us off the aircraft. We can do this voluntarily, or we can do this with force. The choice is yours." "I need exactly 4 more minutes to resolve this situation peacefully," Maya stated, her voice still quiet but now resonating with an unshakable finality. Captain Roberts scoffed, his face flushing with anger. "You don't have 4 minutes. This is a federal aircraft under my command, and you are currently creating a safety and security hazard." The woman in the diamond necklace, sensing her last chance to contribute to the public shaming, spoke loudly enough for all the nearby cameras to hear. "Captain, I have been flying this airline for over 30 years. This type of entitled, narcissistic behavior is precisely what has gone wrong with air travel today. Thank you for your service." Multiple passengers nodded in vigorous agreement. The narrative was cemented. It was the disruptive, entitled mother versus the professional, heroic crew just trying to maintain order and safety for everyone else. But the blogger on the aviation forum saw something else. His years of analyzing industry incidents had trained him to spot anomalies. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Passenger exhibits 0 signs of genuine distress. Her calm is tactical, controlled. This isn't a tantrum. Something else is going on here. Maya's phone buzzed again, insistently. The caller ID flashed for a moment, clear as day. Apex Air, Corporate Emergency Line. She declined the call again. Brenda's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Who keeps calling you? I told you your man on the ground can't override federal law." The insult drew another round of appreciative smirks from the passengers who were enjoying the show. The man in the Brioni suit held his phone higher, ensuring he got a clear shot of Brenda's authoritative stance. 4 minutes until mandatory pushback, Captain Roberts announced, tapping his watch impatiently. "Ground security is boarding the aircraft now." Through the airplane's windows, the passengers could now see it. 2 airport security vehicles had pulled up to the jet bridge, their emergency lights painting the tarmac in silent, flashing strobes of red and blue. The situation had now officially escalated beyond a simple passenger removal. It was a full-blown security operation. The TikTok livestream hit 38,000 viewers. Local Chicago news stations had alerts pinging on phones all over the city. Developing story. Viral incident unfolding on Apex Air Flight 921 at O'Hare International. 3 uniformed ground security officers boarded through the forward galley. Their gear, heavy belts laden with restraints, radios, and body cameras, jingled ominously as they walked, a sound that promised a non-negotiable end to the standoff. "Ma'am," the lead officer announced, his voice polite but firm. "By order of the flight captain, and in conjunction with the federal air marshals, you are being removed from this aircraft. Please comply voluntarily to avoid the use of physical force." Maya took a slow, deliberate breath. She let her gaze sweep across the cabin, taking in every recording phone, every hostile and smug face, and the overwhelming display of authority that was now arrayed against her and her child. Baby Leo gurgled softly, his little hand reaching out towards the lead officer's shiny badge. 3 minutes, she said quietly. Captain Roberts' face was now a mask of pure fury. "You have 0 minutes. Officers, please escort this passenger and her infant from the aircraft, now." The security team closed in. The passengers leaned forward, their phones poised to capture the climactic, forcible removal. The TikTok viewer count jumped past 40,000. But something in Maya's eyes, a flash of something that was not fear but anticipation, made the most astute observers, and even Air Marshal Cardenas, pause for a fraction of a second. She wasn't panicking, she wasn't pleading, she wasn't bracing for a struggle. She was simply waiting. Air Marshal Cardenas hesitated, a flicker of professional doubt crossing his face. "Ma'am, if you have some kind of legitimate medical concern or documentation that we need to be aware of, now is the time to—" "Cardenas!" Captain Roberts cut him off sharply, his authority challenged. "We do not negotiate with disruptive passengers. Remove her. That's an order." Brenda stepped forward, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "This," she announced to the cabin at large, "is exactly why we have these security protocols in place. Some people believe they can manipulate any situation with fake emergencies and social media theatrics." The cabin erupted in a brief but fervent round of applause for Brenda's firm stance. Comments on the live stream hailed her as a hero. Maya leaned down, kissed Leo's forehead one more time, and whispered something so low it was impossible to hear. Then, with a slow, deliberate calm that defied the entire situation, she picked up her phone. 2 minutes, she said. "Time's up," Captain Roberts declared, gesturing to the security team. "Officers, proceed with the removal." As the security officers moved to put their hands on her, to physically restrain her and her child, Maya tapped a single contact on her phone's screen and activated the speaker. The call connected instantly, without even ringing. "Hi, baby," she said softly into the phone, her voice a stark contrast to the tension in the cabin. "I'm having a little bit of trouble on your airline." A deep, powerful male voice answered from the speakerphone, a voice that carried an immediate and terrifying weight of command. "Which aircraft, honey? I'll handle this myself. Right now." Captain Roberts' blood turned to ice in his veins. Every single pilot at Apex Air, from the junior first officers to the most seasoned captains, knew that voice. It was the voice of the man who signed every one of their paychecks. Maya's reply was gentle, almost conversational, as if she were discussing dinner plans. "Flight 931, first class. The crew seems to be experimenting with some new customer service techniques." The voice on the phone crackled, filled with a barely controlled fury that was more frightening than any shout. "This is David Williams, Chief Executive Officer of Apex Air. Every single person on that aircraft with a badge or a uniform will step back from my wife immediately." The cabin was plunged into a silence so deep and absolute it was suffocating. The only sounds were Leo's soft, happy cooing and the distant whine of a jet engine from the tarmac. Brenda Davis's face drained of all color, her expression crumbling as a tidal wave of horrified understanding crashed over her. Captain Roberts physically staggered backward, as if he'd been struck, his 2.5 decades of authority disintegrating in a single, terrifying instant. The TikTok live stream exploded, the viewer count jumping past 50,000 as the comment section went completely, irreversibly insane. "Plot twist of the fucking century. She's the CEO's wife? OMG, they are so fired, every last one of them. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit." The ground security officers and the air marshals backed away from Maya as if she had suddenly burst into flames. They took several steps back, raising their hands to show they were no longer a threat. David Williams' voice continued to emanate from the phone, each word an ice-cold dagger. "Captain Roberts, Ms. Davis, I suggest you don't move. I will be reviewing every second of this incident personally, and when I say personally, I mean it." Maya remained perfectly composed, gently rocking her son as 200 passengers and crew members stared at her in a state of collective, horrified shock. "1 minute until departure, honey," she said sweetly into the phone. "Cancel the departure," David's voice came back instantly. "Ground the aircraft. We have much, much bigger problems to deal with first." The woman they had humiliated, assaulted, and tried to forcibly remove from the plane didn't just have a ticket. She owned the entire airline. And everyone had just watched it happen. Live, in front of the whole world. The suffocating silence that had fallen over the cabin was now thick with palpable fear. Over 200 people, passengers and crew alike, stared at Maya Williams, their minds struggling to reconcile the image of the humiliated young mother with the reality of her power. Baby Leo, blissfully unaware of the corporate cataclysm his mother had just unleashed, let out a happy gurgle. David Williams' voice, crisp and amplified by the phone's speaker, sliced through the tension. "Maya, are you and Leo physically unharmed?" "We're fine now," she replied, her calm voice a stark counterpoint to the chaos. "Although Ms. Davis did find it necessary to slap me across the face while I was holding our son because he was crying." The admission detonated in the cabin like a stun grenade. Every passenger who had been recording suddenly had a sickening realization. They were now in possession of felony assault evidence, evidence of an attack on the wife of the CEO of the airline they were flying. Hands holding iPhones began to tremble. Captain Roberts, his face a ghostly white, finally found his voice, though it was strained and cracking. "Mr. Williams." "Sir, this is Captain Roberts." "Sir, there appears to have been a terrible misunderstanding." "So, a misunderstanding?" David's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Captain, I am watching the TikTok live stream as we speak. 52,000 people just watched an employee under your command assault my wife while she was holding my infant son. Explain to me what part of that I am misunderstanding." The live stream had, in fact, surged to 52,000 viewers. The college student's hands were shaking so badly she could barely keep the phone steady. The comments scrolled by in an unreadable blur of shock and awe. The CEO's wife. "I can't. This is a movie. Everyone is getting fired. The captain, the flight attendant, all of them. This is the most legendary thing I have ever seen." Brenda the flight attendant is toast. Brenda Davis, meanwhile, had backed herself against the galley wall as if seeking an escape that didn't exist. Her face was a frantic kaleidoscope of disbelief, sheer terror, and desperate, sputtering denial. This can't be happening," she muttered to herself. "It's some kind of trick. She's just a passenger." "Ms. Davis." David's voice was deathly quiet, making it all the more terrifying. "You just referred to my wife as just a passenger, moments after you physically assaulted her. Please, continue speaking. I am recording this entire exchange for our corporate legal team and for the district attorney's office." The business blogger, the one posting to the aviation forum, froze mid-sentence. His thread had exploded, becoming a source of real-time information for the entire global aviation industry. He frantically deleted his initial biased narrative and began typing a new headline. Breaking. Apex Air Crew. Assaults CEO's wife on Flight 921, live streamed to thousands. Air Marshal Cardenas slowly, deliberately, raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, taking another step away from Maya. "Ma'am, Mrs. Williams, we were responding to the reports from the flight crew. We had no prior knowledge of your identity." "Of course you didn't," Maya replied, her voice soft but pointed as she adjusted Leo's blanket. "That was rather the point of all this, wasn't it? To see how ordinary passengers are treated when your crew members make judgments based on nothing more than their own prejudices." Captain Roberts made a last desperate attempt at damage control. "Sir, Mr. Williams, if we could perhaps discuss this matter privately, I am certain we can resolve—" "Privately?" David's laugh was a harsh, bitter sound. "Captain, 52,000 people are part of this discussion right now. The window for privacy closed the second your flight attendant decided to strike my wife in front of an audience." The woman in the diamonds, who moments before had been loudly applauding Brenda's authority, now seemed to be trying to shrink into her seat, to become invisible. Her condescending remarks had been captured on a dozen live streams, her face clearly visible, and the terrifying implications of her public stance were beginning to dawn on her. Maya reached back into her carry-on bag and retrieved the platinum and black card she had hidden earlier. It wasn't just an executive card. Holding it up for all the still-recording cameras to see, the gold-embossed lettering was unmistakable. Mrs. Maya Williams, Apex Air First Family, ownership verification. The cabin erupted in a series of sharp, shocked gasps and frantic murmurs. Several passengers immediately stopped recording and shoved their phones into their pockets, their faces turning pale as they realized their complicity in cheering on the assault was now part of a permanent digital record, tied forever to their social media profiles. "Honey," Maya said into the phone, her voice carrying easily through the silent cabin. "Do you think I should mention the merger announcement now?" There was a calculated pause on the other end. Then David's voice returned, filled with cold strategy. "Not yet, sweetheart. Let's see how they handle the next 2 minutes first. Let's give them every opportunity to either dig their hole deeper or begin to comprehend the consequences." Brenda's desperation finally boiled over into outright denial. "This is impossible. It's a lie. I have worked for Apex Air for 9 years. I would know who the CEO's family is." "Would you?" Maya asked quietly, her question hanging in the air like a guillotine. "Have you ever seen a photograph of David's wife and child? Has the company ever distributed our personal photos and information to its tens of thousands of employees? Or do they, like most responsible corporations, fiercely protect the privacy of their executives' families?" The question needed no answer, because the answer was self-evident. Privacy was paramount. They wouldn't know her. And that was the point. Captain Roberts, his hands shaking violently, fumbled for his radio. "Ground control, this is Apex 921. We need to delay our departure indefinitely. We have a situation on board requiring immediate corporate intervention." The voice from ground control crackled back, laced with confusion. "Apex 921. Please clarify the nature of your situation. Our monitors show a full security response already in progress at your gate." Roberts looked at Maya, his expression one of utter helplessness. She simply nodded toward her phone. David's voice took over the radio frequency, his authority overriding all standard protocol. "Ground control, this is David Williams, CEO of Apex Air, on a secure line. You are to cancel any and all security responses to Flight 921 immediately. I am personally handling this matter. Is that understood?" Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, copy that. All units are standing down, sir." The TikTok livestream hit 58,000 viewers. Local and national news vans were already racing towards O'Hare. Apex Scandal was trending #1 in the United States, overtaking Twatcher flight drama. The real shock, however, came next. Maya calmly initiated a video call on her phone. The screen flickered to life, revealing a large, polished boardroom table surrounded by people in suits, all staring intently at their own screens, watching the cabin drama unfold in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen of Flight 921, Maya announced, her voice resonating with a newfound power. "I'd like to introduce you to the executive leadership team of Apex Air. They've been watching this entire incident from the very beginning." The camera on her phone panned slowly, showing the horrified faces of the chief operating officer, the head of legal counsel, and the airline's federal aviation liaisons. Their expressions were a mixture of pure fury and professional crisis management. David Williams now appeared on the screen, a distinguished, powerful black man whose tailored suit could not conceal the rage simmering just beneath the surface. His eyes, cold and analytical, scanned the cabin through Maya's phone. "Ms. Davis," he said, and his voice carried through the first-class section with chilling clarity. "You chose to physically assault my wife in front of 60,000 live witnesses. Federal law defines assault on an aircraft as a felony offense. one that often carries a mandatory prison sentence. Are you familiar with that statute? Brenda's knees audibly buckled. Mr. Williams, I didn't know. I was just following our safety protocols. Safety protocols? David's eyebrow arched. Please, show me the specific regulation in your crew manual that authorizes a flight attendant to strike a passenger who is holding an infant. She couldn't, of course. No such regulation existed. It was a complete fabrication. The businessman in the Brioni suit, who had been one of Brenda's most vocal supporters, was now frantically trying to delete his posts and comments from social media. But it was too late. Screenshots were already spreading across the internet like wildfire. Captain Roberts made one final, desperate appeal to the man who was, until 10 minutes ago, his boss. Sir, emotions in the cabin were running high. Mistakes were clearly made, but surely this is a matter we can handle through internal corporate channels. Internal channels? David cut him off. Captain, this incident is already being actively investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, the Department of Transportation, and very shortly, the Department of Justice. We are far beyond the point of internal channels. He gestured to someone just off camera in the boardroom. Our legal team is, as we speak, preparing a brief to recommend federal charges: assault, battery, civil rights violations, and child endangerment. Maya spoke up again, her voice cutting through the layers of corporate and legal jargon. David, honey, should I tell them about the permanent security footage? A new voice entered the conversation. A man on the video call, identified by the nameplate as David Park, head of legal, spoke directly to Maya. Mrs. Williams, per federal regulations, all crew passenger interactions in the forward galley and cabin are recorded on a closed-loop system with both video and audio. We have a complete, high-definition record of the entire incident from multiple angles. The implication of that statement descended on the cabin like a physical weight. Not only had Brenda's assault been witnessed by tens of thousands online, it had been captured in perfect, unforgivable detail by the airline's own federally mandated security cameras. Brenda finally slumped against the galley wall, a broken woman. Her career was over. Her professional certifications would be stripped, and criminal charges were now not just a possibility, but an inevitability. But David Williams wasn't finished. Captain Roberts, in your 25 years of service with this airline, can you tell me how many official discrimination complaints have been filed against crews under your direct command? The captain's face went completely ashen. Sir, I don't have those figures readily available. I do, David replied icily. 19 formal complaints over the last 10 years. All of them were quietly settled out of court. All of them were buried by a previous corporate administration. That pattern of behavior, and our complicity in hiding it, ends today. The revelation sent another shockwave through the cabin. Apex Air, a company that prided itself on its public image, had a history of covering up discrimination. Today's live-streamed assault had just ripped the bandage off a deep, festering wound. The TikTok view count surpassed 65,000. National news networks were breaking into their regular morning programming to cover the story live. Apex assault was now trending globally. Air Marshal Cardenas, choosing his words with extreme care, spoke up. Mr. Williams, sir, for the record, we were responding to the information and the threat assessment provided by the flight crew. We were following standard protocol for a potentially disruptive passenger situation. Standard protocol for what, Marshal? David demanded, his tone sharp. For a mother traveling by herself with her 7-month-old child? For a passenger who, according to our own audio recordings, never once raised her voice, never made a single threat, and never resisted a single crew instruction until she was physically assaulted. The marshals had no answer because there was no justifiable answer. Their protocols had been exploited. Maya kissed Leo's forehead, then looked directly into the lens of the TikToker's phone, speaking to the massive audience. For every single person watching this right now, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that assumptions and prejudice can destroy lives. Today, over 60,000 people witnessed, in real time, what happens when systemic prejudice is finally confronted with inescapable accountability. The college student filming could barely breathe. She whispered to her viewers, "This is the most incredible thing I have ever witnessed. The CEO's own wife just got assaulted by his employees on a live stream, and he is shutting it all down." David's voice boomed with final, absolute authority. "Flight 921 will remain grounded at this gate until every single passenger has deplaned, and this aircraft has been secured as a federal crime scene. Ms. Davis and Captain Roberts, your employment with Apex Air is terminated, effective immediately. You are both suspended pending criminal charges." Brenda finally shattered, a raw, animalistic sob tearing from her throat as tears streamed down her face. "Please, Mr. Williams, please, I have a family. I have a mortgage. I just made a mistake." "You made a choice," Maya corrected her, her voice gentle but firm as steel. "And choices always have consequences. Today, your consequences happen to be very, very public." The video call from the boardroom revealed more people entering the room. Men and women in dark suits, clearly federal investigators, more aviation attorneys, and crisis management specialists. The full, awesome weight of corporate and federal power was now mobilizing in response to a single, viral slap. David addressed the entire cabin directly through the intercom system his wife now controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have all been witness to something that, tragically, happens far too often in the shadows of air travel. Discrimination born from lazy, arrogant assumptions. The only difference today is that everyone saw it, everyone recorded it, and now everyone will remember it." At that precise moment, baby Leo let out a delighted laugh, a pure, innocent sound of joy that sliced through the crushing tension like a ray of sunlight through a thunderhead. "The merger announcement can wait," David said, his eyes on the video feed fixed on his wife, his expression softening with love and immense admiration. "We have much more important work to do first." Maya offered a small, dignified smile to the camera, her composure and grace intact despite everything she had just endured. "Change only happens when power is forced to confront prejudice in public. Today, over 65,000 people just got a masterclass in what real accountability looks like." The main aircraft door hissed open, not for departure, but to allow a team of federal investigators to board. Their cameras flashed as they began the meticulous process of documenting the crime scene. The woman they had all tried to remove now held their futures in the palm of her hand, and the entire world was watching her decide what to do next. The boardroom on the video call transformed from a crisis center into a real-time federal tribunal. Investigators, seasoned attorneys, and high-ranking FAA officials had joined the conference, turning what started as a family's difficult travel day into a full-scale corporate overhaul, witnessed live by a global audience that now numbered over 70,000 people. David Williams's voice resonated with the full weight of his corporate and personal authority. "Before we move to individual consequences, let's establish the comprehensive facts for everyone present, both on this aircraft and in Washington. Last year, Apex Air generated $5.1 billion in revenue. Our customer satisfaction rating stood at an industry-leading 92%. He paused, letting the magnitude of those numbers settle in the air. "Today's incident not only jeopardizes our brand, it threatens our federal operating certificates, our insurance liabilities, and government contracts worth nearly $1 billion annually." A new face appeared on the video call, a woman with sharp, intelligent features. Her nameplate read, Sarah Jenkins, Lead Investigator, FAA. "Mr. Williams," she began, her tone all business, "our preliminary review of the live-streamed evidence indicates multiple flagrant violations of Code of Federal Regulations, Title 14, Section 121.580, which strictly governs passenger safety and mandatory crew conduct. This is a severe breach." Captain Roberts, still standing in the aisle like a man on death row, made one last attempt to salvage some shred of his professional dignity. "Sir, with all due respect, Ms. Davis's isolated actions do not reflect the standard protocols or culture of Apex Air." "Don't they?" David's retort was swift and brutal. "David Park," he commanded, addressing his head of legal counsel, "please share Captain Roberts' complete crew complaint history with Investigator Jenkins and everyone else watching." David Park, the airline's top lawyer, consulted his tablet with a grim, clinical precision. "Of course. Captain Roberts has been the commanding officer on flights that generated 19 separate discrimination complaints over the past decade. The average out-of-court settlement per incident was approximately $300,000, paid by our insurers to keep these matters out of the public record. The total, nearly $6 million, hit the cabin like a physical shockwave. Captain Roberts hadn't just been a pilot. He had been a massive, multi-million-dollar liability, a symbol of a corporate culture that preferred writing checks to solving its systemic problems. And now 70,000 people knew it. "Ms. Davis," David continued, his focus shifting, his voice growing even colder. "Let's look at your file. Your employment record shows 4 prior incidents involving escalated confrontations with passengers of color. All 4 were de-escalated by other crew members and resulted in mandatory corporate interventions and sensitivity training courses, which you evidently chose to completely ignore." Brenda's voice cracked, a pathetic whimper of desperation. "Mr. Williams, those situations were different. They were complicated. This passenger, her baby was screaming. It was a safety issue." "Was it?" Maya's voice cut in, a quiet question that carried more weight than any shout. She looked at the video call screen. "David, perhaps this is a good time to play the complete, unedited cabin audio and video recording for everyone?" Every single face in the aircraft, from the smug businessman to the pearl-clad woman, went pale. They had all momentarily forgotten about the unblinking eye of the federally mandated surveillance systems. David nodded curtly to someone off-screen. "Legal, you have the floor. Cue the complete time-stamped recording from initial boarding through the assault." The aircraft's internal speakers crackled to life, and the damning, objective timeline played out for all to hear. First, Leo's initial fussing, clearly the sound of a tired infant, not a maniacal screamer. Then Brenda's voice, dripping with aggression. "Isn't a goddamn nursery? You have 10 seconds to shut that thing up." The sharp, ugly crack of her hand striking Maya's face. Brenda's self-righteous announcement. "Some people lack a fundamental understanding of appropriate travel etiquette." Her sneering accusation. "People like you are always trying to sneak your way into premium cabins." And finally, the most damning phrase, filled with layers of prejudice. "Your baby daddy isn't going to get you out of this." Each recorded word, each sound, built an irrefutable case of premeditated, biased aggression and unprovoked assault. The TikTok audience, which had now swelled to 75,000 viewers, listened in stunned, horrified silence as the objective evidence systematically dismantled Brenda's every claim. Captain Roberts visibly slumped against a seat back. The audio evidence was incontrovertible, and his on-record vocal support of Brenda's actions made him legally and professionally complicit in federal crimes. Investigator Jenkins from the FAA continued her methodical assessment, her voice unwavering. "Mr. Williams, based on this evidence, We are looking at potential violations under U.S. Code Title 49, Section 46504, concerning interference with flight crew members and attendants. However, in this case, the crew members appear to be the primary aggressors, which opens up a host of other criminal liabilities for the airline and the individuals. Absolutely correct, Investigator Jenkins, David replied with practiced legal precision. Our legal team, in consultation with former federal prosecutors, has already identified multiple chargeable offenses, including assault within a special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, egregious civil rights violations under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, and felony child endangerment due to the act of violence occurring in the immediate presence of an infant. Air Marshal Cardenas, who had remained respectfully silent during this executive-level deconstruction, finally spoke, choosing his words with immense care. Sir, for the official record, our team responded to a direct crew report in good faith. We had no grounds to believe this was an act of discrimination, rather than a legitimate safety concern at the time. David's expression softened fractionally as he addressed the federal agents. Agent Cardenas, your team followed established protocols that rely on the presumption of crew integrity. However, this incident proves those protocols are flawed. They require immediate revision to include independent verification of crew claims before escalating to the threat of physical force against a passenger, especially one traveling with a child. He then turned his attention back to his head of legal. David Park, what is our best estimate comprehensive liability exposure if this incident proceeds to a federal trial with the current level of media coverage? Park, a man who dealt in catastrophic numbers, consulted several data streams on his tablets. The calculations were visible to the boardroom cameras, underscoring the transparency. Conservatively, Mr. Williams, we're looking at a baseline of $20 to $30 million in punitive and compensatory damages, given the irrefutable, viral nature of the evidence and the documented emotional distress to your wife and son. That figure does not account for the high probability of a class action lawsuit from the victims of the 19 prior incidents involving Captain Roberts. The business blogger on the flight had long since abandoned the industry forum. He was now live tweeting the fallout, his updates being retweeted thousands of times per minute by journalists and market analysts. His latest post was chilling. Apex Air CEO confirms internal investigation into systemic discrimination cover-up. Federal charges imminent for crew. Stock is now down 12% in after-hours trading. The financial bleeding was real, and it was happening in real time. David Williams finally addressed the entire aircraft and the watching world through the speaker system, his voice ringing with the authority of a man making history. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have witnessed here is the end of an era of corporate secrecy. It is corporate accountability in its most raw and public form. To that end, Ms. Brenda Davis and Captain Roberts are, as I stated before, terminated, effective immediately. Brenda let out a final, anguished scream that echoed through the cabin. You can't do this. You can't fire me for following the safety rules. What safety rule? Maya asked, her voice devastatingly calm, posing the question that would seal Brenda's fate. Ms. Davis, for the federal investigators, please cite the specific federal aviation regulation that authorizes a crew member to slap a passenger who is holding a baby. Complete, damning silence was her only answer. Mr. Park, David continued with ruthless corporate efficiency, please outline the immediate legal and professional consequences for both of these terminated employees. The head of legal consulted his notes as if reading an obituary. Ms. Davis faces federal assault charges, which carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 6 to 12 months in a federal penitentiary under prevailing aviation law. Captain Roberts faces federal charges of enabling assault, willful failure to protect passenger safety, and perjury for his initial false report. Both individuals forfeit all company benefits, pensions, stock options, and insurance coverage under our newly enacted zero-tolerance discrimination policy. Their professional FAA certifications will be permanently revoked within 72 hours. The sheer weight and finality of those consequences crushed both employees. Captain Roberts finally found his voice one last time, a pathetic plea. "Sir, 25 years of dedicated service to this airline, 25 years of systematically enabling discrimination," David corrected him with brutal, unvarnished honesty. "Your service record is not one of loyalty, Captain. It is a documented pattern of protecting abusive crew members at the expense of our passengers' civil rights." The TikTok livestream peaked at 89,000 concurrent viewers as major international news outlets like the BBC and CNN picked up the feed. Apex accountability was the #1 trend worldwide. Investigator Jenkins outlined the systematic next steps from the FAA's perspective. "Mr. Williams, the Department of Transportation will require Apex Air to immediately implement enhanced crew training, oversight, and comprehensive passenger protection protocols across your entire fleet." "It is already being developed, investigator," David replied efficiently. "Effective immediately across our entire global network, Apex Air is implementing the LEO protocol. Any crew member who makes unauthorized physical contact with a passenger not posing a direct and verifiable safety threat will face immediate termination and referral for federal prosecution. Furthermore," he continued, clicking to a new slide visible to the boardroom cameras, "we are instituting 50 hours of mandatory recurring training in bias awareness, advanced de-escalation tactics, and comprehensive passenger civil rights education. Failure to complete and pass these courses will result in automatic revocation of flight certification." The scope and speed of the systemic reform were utterly unprecedented in the history of commercial aviation. "Ms. Davis," David addressed his former employee one last time, "you will now be escorted from this aircraft by the federal air marshals and taken into federal custody, where you will be formally charged with felony assault. Your decision to discriminate was witnessed by nearly 90,000 people and permanently recorded for the courts. There will be no settlement. There will be no plea deal. We will see you at trial." Brenda's legs finally gave out. She slid down the galley wall as security officers moved in to support her, the full, crushing weight of her life-altering mistake finally breaking her completely. "Captain Roberts," David said, "your termination is effective now. Federal investigators will begin a systematic review of every single flight you have ever commanded to identify potential victims for our Class Action Compensation Fund." Roberts just nodded numbly, the vacant look in his eyes that of a man who understood his life as he knew it was irrevocably over. But David Williams wasn't just cleaning house, he was building a new one. "Legal, please announce our new comprehensive passenger Bill of Rights." David Park read from a document that was clearly weeks, if not months, in the making. A plan that was just waiting for the right moment to be implemented. Apex Air now guarantees the following passenger protections. Crew members are legally forbidden from physically contacting passengers except in cases of immediate and verifiable safety threats. All crew-passenger verbal interactions are subject to random audio review by a new, independent federal oversight body. And all discrimination complaints will now bypass internal corporate channels completely and be reported directly to the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. These reforms were revolutionary, shattering the old industry standards and creating a new benchmark for passenger protection across the entire commercial aviation sector. The college student filming on TikTok could barely contain her excitement as she narrated for her audience. "You guys are watching history. 89,000 people are watching the most epic corporate justice moment I have ever seen. This CEO just fired his own employees on live TV for being racist to his wife and is now changing the entire airline industry because of it." Investigator Jenkins from the FAA delivered the final verdict. Mr. Williams, the immediate and comprehensive response from Apex Air not only meets but substantially exceeds all federal requirements for rectifying discrimination incidents. The Department of Transportation will be citing the Leo Protocol and your new Passenger Bill of Rights as the gold standard model for mandatory industry-wide reform. David looked directly at the camera on his wife's phone, addressing the massive online audience with a message of hope. Today, we have proven, definitively, that discrimination carries a real and permanent cost. But we have also proven that accountability creates an incredible opportunity for genuine, systemic progress. He then turned his focus back to his wife, his voice filled with love and respect. "Sweetheart, are you and Leo ready to complete your trip?" Maya smiled, kissing her son's forehead tenderly. "Actually," she said, delivering the perfect final twist of the knife, "I think we'll take a different flight today. This particular aircraft seems to need some time to fully absorb today's lessons." The irony was flawless. The CEO's wife was now choosing not to fly on her husband's own airline after being assaulted by his own crew. "Understood completely," David replied, his love and support evident. "Our corporate jet will be ready for you and Leo at the private hangar in 30 minutes. As federal marshals escorted a sobbing Brenda and a shell-shocked Captain Roberts from the aircraft in restraints, the passengers sat in a profound, stunned silence. Their phones had not just captured history, they had documented their own shameful complicity in cheering on bigotry. The woman they had arrogantly assumed was an entitled nobody had owned the airline all along. And the entire world had just learned what true power looks like when it is wielded not for revenge, but for justice.